Have you ever noticed how, in paintings and films, Jesus is almost always shown sitting at a long wooden table, a loaf of fluffy bread in one hand, a large cup of wine in the other, with a basket of fish somewhere nearby? It's an iconic image, familiar and comforting. But what if I told you that much of what we imagine is wrong? What Jesus actually ate was shaped by poverty, geography, religion, and survival. His meals weren't feast-like moments frozen in stained glass windows. They were lived in dust, hunger, and scarcity, but also filled with deep meaning. When you understand what Jesus truly ate, you begin to understand his world, his teachings, and the people he came to reach. This story begins in the kitchens, fields, and fishing boats of ancient Galilee. Let's step inside that world. The world Jesus ate in was not modern. There were no supermarkets, no sugar, no processed flour, no refrigerators. Food was seasonal, fragile, and precious. Every meal was a decision about survival. Picture the northern hills of Galilee at sunrise. Mist rolls across rocky fields. Small stone houses cling to the slopes. Women begin grinding grain on rough handstones. Smoke rises from clay ovens. A rooster calls. This is where Jesus grew up. This is where he learned to eat like the poor. Jesus' daily meals didn't look like 3 large plates a day. Instead, his diet followed a rhythm. Simple food eaten slowly, shared with others, and always tied to gratitude. And the most important foundation of his diet was bread. But not the fluffy white bread we know. This bread was dark, dense, earthy, and gritty with stone-ground flour and fragments of bran. A humble round loaf, baked in clay ovens or on heated stones. Bread was life. Bread was survival. Bread was sacred. So sacred that when Jesus prayed, "Give us this day our daily bread," the people listening didn't think of comfort. They thought of hunger, dependence, and fragile hope. Because in his world, missing one harvest could mean famine. And bread was everything. But bread alone was not enough. Beside it sat the food that flavored nearly every meal he ate: olive oil, golden, bitter, and rich, pressed from ancient groves across Galilee. Olive oil was dipped with bread, poured over vegetables, and used for cooking. It was also used for lamps, for burial, and for anointing the sick. It was food, medicine, and worship all in one. Yet Jesus' meals were still incomplete without one more essential companion: a humble dish placed at the center of nearly every table: salt. Not white table salt. This was rough, mineral-rich desert salt, scraped from the Dead Sea and carried along trade routes. It preserved fish, it flavored bread, it kept food from rotting in the heat. Salt meant survival. So when Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth," the people around him instantly understood. Salt wasn't just seasoning. It was value. It was life, and those words carried immense weight. But there was another pillar of his diet, something common, ordinary, yet deeply symbolic. Fish. Not huge roasted fillets like in the paintings, but small fish, dried, salted, sometimes pickled, caught in the Sea of Galilee. Fishermen worked through the night, their nets dragging across dark water. Jesus walked that shoreline. He called his disciples there. He ate fish with them. Most fish wasn't eaten fresh. It was preserved, packed in salt, and stored for long journeys. When Jesus multiplied fish for the crowds, he was feeding them something they knew well: the food of the working poor, the food of fishermen, the food of his people. It wasn't glamorous, it was survival. And that made the miracle even greater. But what about meat? This is where modern assumptions break. Jesus did not eat meat daily. In fact, meat was rare. Animals were precious, used for labor, wool, and milk. They were a farmer's most valuable asset. Meat was reserved for special occasions, a major festival, a wedding, or when hosting an honored guest. So, a meal with lamb or goat wasn't a regular Tuesday dinner, it was a celebration. It marked a moment of abundance and community in a life defined by scarcity. So, the next time you see a painting of the Last Supper, look past the grand table and the perfect loaf of bread. Imagine instead a simple, shared meal. Dark, crusty bread. A bowl of salty olives, some dried fish, and a shared cup of wine. Imagine the conversation, the gratitude, the community. This wasn't just food for the body, it was nourishment for the soul. It was a picture of dependence, survival, and profound faith. And in that humble meal, we find a story far more powerful than any painting could ever capture. In the first century, people didn't raise livestock for regular meals. Animals were valuable for wool, milk, and labor. To eat an animal was a huge expense. Most families only tasted meat during festivals or major celebrations. Lamb was reserved for Passover. Beef was almost unheard of. Even a chicken was a rare luxury. This means Jesus likely ate meat just a few times a year. And when he did, it was always tied to sacrifice, gratitude, or a sacred covenant. For him, Meals weren't just about food, they were spiritual moments. Every bite carried meaning, and every table held history. So, what did Jesus eat regularly? The food of the common person, legumes and vegetables. Imagine lentils simmering in clay pots, chickpeas crushed into paste, and tables filled with onions, leeks, wild herbs, figs, cucumbers, pomegranates, and grapes. The land shaped the table. Everything was seasonal, everything was local, and nothing was wasted. When Jesus spoke of vines, fields, shepherds, and seeds, he wasn't just using metaphors, he was speaking from his lived experience, from the world right in front of him. But perhaps the most misunderstood food from his time was wine. This wasn't the strong, sweet wine we know today. Ancient wine was simple, often sour and earthy, and always diluted with water. It was safer to drink than most water sources, and it wasn't for getting drunk. To share wine was to share friendship, to seal a bond. So when Jesus sat at the table with sinners, tax collectors, and the outcasts, and he broke bread and poured wine, he was doing something radical. He wasn't just eating with them, he was restoring their dignity. He was welcoming the rejected. He was telling them, you belong at my table. And this is where the story gets even deeper. In his world, meals were boundaries. Who you ate with showed who you valued. The wealthy ate with the wealthy, and the righteous with the righteous. But Jesus, he sat with the broken, the unclean, the judged, and the poor. He didn't eat meals of luxury. He shared meals of grace. He shattered social rules and dismantled pride. But this is why the religious leaders were so shocked. He wasn't just eating, he was using meals to reveal the very heart of God. Then, there was one final meal. In a quiet, dimly lit room, with bread on a simple plate and wine in a shared cup, Jesus lifted the bread, the food of the poor, the symbol of daily survival, and said, "This is my body." He then lifted the cup, the symbol of fellowship and belonging, and said, "This is my blood." A lifetime of humble meals, of gratitude and simplicity, all converged in that one moment. The table became a promise. From that night on, every Christian table, whether rich or poor, grand or humble, would be forever connected to that moment. To bread, to wine, to sacrifice, to love. So, what did Jesus really eat? He ate the food of the poor, the laborers, the fishermen, and the farmers. He ate bread baked by calloused hands, oil pressed from ancient groves, and vegetables grown in rocky soil. His meals were humble, but his table was limitless. Because in the end, it was never about how much food he had. It was about how much love he poured out for those he shared it with. Today, every time we break bread, every time we share a meal, we're reminded that the simplest table can hold the most profound meaning. Thank you for watching. If this journey into the world of Jesus moved you or gave you a deeper understanding, consider subscribing. There are so many more stories to explore together. Until next time, may your table be simple, may your heart be grateful, and may you never forget that even the humblest meal can be holy.